Kyouka is a lyrical deck that focuses on using normal orders called magazines every single turn. This allows you to get the benefit of the actual magazine itself, as well as the benefit of your cards when you have played a magazine that turn. This allows you to get some pretty decent number of both attacks and actually attack values on your cards. Your typical list looks something like this. You'll play the native Kyouka ride line here. The grade 0 can be whatever you want, doesn't really matter. When it comes to the triggers, we'll play the blue over trigger. For heals, we're playing 4 of the vanilla heals and then 3 of the effect fronts, followed by a total of 8 vanilla critical triggers. We don't really need the soul in crits or the draws. For sentinels, we'll be playing 1 of Mantaria, 3 of the normal unit PGs. Then for grade 3s, we'll be playing 3 of the dress up Kyouka, 1 of the original Kyouka. For grade 2s, we'll be playing 3 of the Arche, 3 of the Turin, and 3 of the Frenchette Pink. For the grade 1s, we'll be playing 4 of the Freddies, 3 of the Milfred, and 3 of the Elastina. And then finally for the orders, we're playing 4 of the original Lyrical Shooting Star and 3 of the promo. So to give a quick rundown of how this deck works, or how this build works specifically, the grade 3 Kyouka gives all your front row 5k if you played a magazine. You can search your top 5 for a specific grade that you call or a magazine, add it to your hand instead of calling it out to the field like the original one did. I'm playing a high number of grade 1s so that I can always basically, when in doubt, just say grade 1, more than likely add a PG or a bunch of the grade 1s that I play in the deck. We can play Kyoukas here, whichever version. They get 5k in the back row and they can attack from the back row, and then we can use Frenchette Pink to bounce this back to hand, or we can use that to bounce PGs back to hand. We also have this, which we can call out double front row. Whenever Kyouka attacks at the end of that battle, we can counterblast Soul Blast to restand both of these, right? And then we have these both magazines that we can play. The real best one here is the grade 3 one, because it allows you to counterblast one, choose a card from 2 cards from your drop with different grades, call them to rearguard circle. Then if you have grades 1, 2, and 3 essentially, you can play an additional magazine that turn. So you really want to use this because a lot of your cards remove themselves from the field, and it gives you a lot of board recursion because it's a very piece heavy deck. Then you can play this one, which is the original Shooting Star, that says depending on the number of grades you have on the board, you can activate its different effects. So if you have 2 grade 3s, you can actually countercharge. If you have 2 grade 2s, you can choose one of your grade 2s or one of your units, give them 10k. And if you have 2 grade 1s, you can draw 2, discard 1. Which is why, again, we're playing the Elastina here, because this isn't a +1. Sorry, I'm pointing at Kyouka. This is not a +1, right? Because you play a card, so that's -1. You draw 1, so you go even. Then you draw again to go plus, and then you have to discard, so you just break even, right, from playing this card. This allows you to keep that card, so you can discard this for ride, and then use this later on to then get that card back. You can also swap this out for the Precia if you want. Honestly, I've just been trying Elastina just because it combos with this and allows me again to just constantly ping for grade 1s for the effects. And that's just a general rundown on how this deck works. For this deck, you have, for this specific build, you have 2 different routes that you can take depending on the game state and who you're fighting or whatnot. So route A is something like this, where you have yourselves a couple of different options right off the bat. So you want a front row like this, you want the Arche, and you want the Frenchette Pink. You want at least 1 copy of the Fredis out on the board. The other grade 1 side, you can choose either another Fredis or a Mildred. If you want, maybe the Elastina, but typically you don't want that on the board. Mildred is nice because it goes to solo and draws you a card. Fredis is nice because she allows you to add a Kyouka or a magazine from your drop, right? So depending on what you have in your hand, if you need to get a magazine for next turn, you want to play Fredis, right? Or if you just have access to it, right, you want to play it. So this doesn't matter too much. It's really these 3, right, that really matter. And then here in the back row. So what you want to do is you basically always want to make sure that you can do 5 attacks every single turn, because you don't really have crazy amounts of power. So you want to output as many attacks as you can consistently. The way to do that is to play Kyouka, which is why I'm playing additional copies of Kyouka in the deck, because this can attack from the back row. So this allows you to have 1, 2, 3. This restands for 5 attacks here on your turn, which is good, which allows you to then push your opponent. Unfortunately, you can only do this if your opponent is grade 3 or greater. So sometimes you might have to swap out, and instead you can like play PG back here, grab a PG. Or if like, let's say you went second and you know next turn you're gonna get pushed, like you're going up against Varga and their divine skill is active and you really need a PG, you can bring back a PG and use that instead, bounce it to your hand. By bring back, of course, I'm saying with this the special issue magazine, right? So that's kind of the route A that you can take, where it's just kind of you farming up, or just like the more like base route that you can do, where like end of turn you're going to be able to get this order back, and you're going to be able to, thanks to the friendship pick, get these 2 back into hand. So you can then Persona Ride, use Kyouka's skill here to Soul Blast like a top 5. Then you can play this order. This retires itself to bring you this, and then you can bring these 2 back again. And you just keep looping that, as long as, of course, you have the friendship pink, right? And the target that you call out from drop can change depending on, you know, what you manage to acquire. But that's the general game plan for Route A. Route B, however, is essentially kind of the same thing, except instead of friendship pink, we have here another archer, right? The back row doesn't really matter as much. You probably would rather have the Mildred in this situation, but this is your kill turn, essentially, right? This is assuming that you manage to Persona Ride, so you have the front K to the 10K to the front row here, and you also manage to play the original shooting star, so you can give this 10K, so that when it restands, right, and before it restands, it hits with really good numbers, because this allows you to have 6 attacks here, right? Because presumably if you Persona Ride, your opponent's on grade 3, so this can swing in for 18, you can swing in here for 40, 30, this can swing in for 23, or sorry, 28. You counterblast, soul blast to restand these 2, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 attacks here, right? You really only want to do that on your kill turn, because it costs a lot of resources, right? It counts 2 counterblast that you have to have face up. You're not able to get this to Persona Ride for next turn. You're probably going to need to use this to get back your cards, right? So you're gonna have a board, you're gonna end with a board that looks like this, which isn't really much. So this you really only use when you want to push for game. 6 attacks is nothing to scoff at, right? And that's one of the strengths of this deck, and that's your route B, but that's really on your kill turn. Otherwise, you just go into route A, constantly farm up, try and push your opponent, try to get close to ending the game there. So at the start of the game, when it comes to your mulligan, your obvious targets to try and get are your magazines, right? Try and get specifically this magazine, because it makes your discard targets afterwards a lot easier, because you can just bring those cards back. But this is good to have as well, because it is a magazine if in case you don't see any other magazines, don't want to pay to get the other one. This is also usable on, technically on turn 1, but you can use it on turn 2 to have a good turn 2 aggression play. So you want to try and get one of these in hand. Other than that, right, if you can get your combo pieces, that would be nice. Archie would be nice to have. Mainly you want to try and see if you can get a friendship pink, because it again allows you to have some turn 2 aggression, and it's also easier to just have access to this so you can start doing your plays. This is decent to keep a hold on, right? So this is the turn. I didn't really talk about this. This gets 5k if you played a magazine, which is fine, but also it says if you played a magazine, you can EB2 put this to soul, so it gives you soul. Look at the top 7. Choose a card that's not her or a magazine, and you can go ahead and call that to rear if it's a unit, or the magazine added to your hand. So this easily lets you access to another card. It also gives you deck thinning. You can easily discard this, call this with this, transform it into another card, essentially, right? So this is okay to keep. The free disc is really nice because it allows you to, for example, if you do a turn 2 play where you play this, you can get your magazine back, you can discard your Kyoukas, get it back with this, however you want. So this is really nice to have access to in the early game. So a nice starting hand would be like this and like a trigger, right? Either one of these 2, maybe even both these 2 and then like a trigger. And the Elastine, of course, is great because you can just discard it for ride and then have access to it, right? So again, if you want, you can play this instead of, you can play Precia instead of this. It kind of fulfills the same purpose. This just has synergy with being a grade 1 and then being discarded, because you do discard in this deck. But yep, that is going to do it for this video on Kyouka. I've been wanting to do it since the deck has released, because it's a deck that I really enjoy, but it is kind of difficult. The deck felt really good in set 2 once it got its first wave, and it just continues to feel better, but it is just needs a little bit more to catch up. and to stick around and compete with everyone else. Till next time, take care of yourselves and each other, play Vanguard, and have yourselves a damn good one.